How are you, Mark?
I'm doing okay, Vince. How you been?
Good, good. What's a good word?
I wish I had one for you.
Yeah, right. Yeah. All
I'm
right.
off today, so that's a good word for you.
Yeah, that'll work. All right. I yeah, I was talking to one of my former colleagues there in plan review is retiring. His thing today is they're having a going away thing for him down there, but I took him to lunch Wednesday. So he's Joe Marconi. He's looking forward to getting out and finally enjoying his family and all that. He was there like 28 years. Wow.
That's a long time, man.
So, yeah, yeah. Yeah, he
So
was, he was
how does
just
this work
talking to me
today?
again.
How does this work
Um,
today? So when everybody gets on, they introduce, and then
yeah,
I'm
whatever.
gonna share a screen, and I'm gonna walk everybody through this.
Yeah. Yes, let me just fill in a couple of blanks there. So, we'll officially call the meeting to order and then I'll introduce um, myself and then we'll go around the room real quick. We usually don't get a lot of participants, but you never know. And we'll ask everybody to just state their name and their position with our division or who they work for and all that. And then I'll introduce you and then turn it over to you. And you can start uh, sharing your screen and make the presentation and so forth. And then, take as much time as you want. It's a hard stop at 4, and everybody always seems to come up with questions, especially on this topic. So,
Well,
you know,
I don't know what
I
I can
think we'll be
actually
fine.
answer for them, when it really comes down to it, but I'll give my best shot. It's a
Yeah.
it's a
No.
crapshoot,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
what I put together. To be honest with you, it's hard to tell
Hmm.
how this is going to affect people one way or the other. I mean,
Right.
it's basically a financial issue,
Yeah.
which you'll hear me say.
Yeah.
Uh, but it will it have an effect in the planning field? Yes, I believe it will, but we'll see. We'll
Okay.
see what happens here.
Okay. All right. Hey, Corey, how are you?
Good. How are you? Just a moment here. I'm trying to get this worked out. Um,
Okay.
did it start recording?
Yeah.
I can't see anybody.
Okay.
'Cause I have to log back off. So I just want to make sure it was recording for everybody. So I'll let you take back controls, okay, Vince? All right. Take care, Vince, okay? Let's go.
Hey, Corey, you there?
Welcome back, Vince.
Yeah, I got thrown off. I don't know what's going on. I went on my phone. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. Mark, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Sorry about that. All right.
Well, Vince, I do have to go, so I am going to make you
Yeah.
host again, though. Okay.
Okay. Very
All right.
good. All
All
right.
right.
Thanks, Corey.
All right. No problem. Take care. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. All right. We'll give it just a minute or so. See if other people jump on, and they may jump on, but we're just as it goes on. Hey, Laura. I see Laura, Jennifer, and Rose. Anyone else on?
Hey, Vince.
How you doing?
Good.
Good. All right. All right. Well, yeah, let's go ahead and get started. And if other people jump on, that'd be fine. So, welcome to the monthly conversation for the Private Practice Division of the American Planning Association. And my name is Vince Cotero, and I am the Professional Development Chair. And we have a good program for you today dealing in the financial area. But before we do that, and I introduce our speaker, let's go around the room and we'll introduce our guests and members that are on the call. Let's start with Alara.
There we go. Sorry. Hey, I am Alara Mills-Gutcher. I am out of Northwest Florida. I own my own practice. I've been in the profession for very long time, over 20 years. And I work for both private and public sector clients, and just happy to be here.
Okay, welcome. All right, Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Kavarik. I am located in Colorado, outside Boulder. This is my first call with this group, so I'm excited to see what it's about. I am a practitioner. I'm a landscape architect and a planner, and so I've been growing a consulting business on the side where I do land planning and a lot of wellness-focused projects. And I also teach at the University of Colorado. So happy to be here.
Great, welcome. And
Thanks.
are you a member, Jennifer, of our division?
I am.
Great.
I just joined when I renewed my membership. Yeah, I've
great.
been a certified planner for like 20 years. So
Great, glad to have you. And you can talk to me offline. I can tell you about the programs that we have and what's coming up and so forth. So
okay, thanks.
glad you're here. Okay,
Thank you.
Rose.
Hi, Rose Scovel from Indianapolis. I work for Rundell Ertzberger Associates. We're a 35-ish person landscape architecture, civil engineering, and planning firm. And I am a senior planner there, and I work on comprehensive planning, zoning, and on-call planning services where we serve as the planning staff for municipalities that don't have their own staff. I also do economic development and housing work.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome. Okay. All right. Let me introduce our speaker and we'll get right into it. I'm pleased to announce today that we have Mark Mason, who's the Assistant City Manager for the City of Cape Coral. And full disclosure, I worked with Mark for several years. I worked for the City of Cape Coral from 2013 to 2023. And Mark is the Financial Services Director for the city. Excuse me, he was hired as the Financial Services Director for the city and was promoted to Assistant City Manager. He has served as the Director of Financial Services for 4 cities over a career that's just under 30 years. And prior to entering the municipal finance field, He worked in private practice for approximately 7 years. Mark has extensive experience with budgeting in municipal governments, designing financial policies, and development that is progressive and transparent in preparing budget documents. He is also very familiar with bond financings, public-private partnerships, and community development districts. He's had many speaking engagements for the Florida Government Finance Officers Association chapter meetings and statewide meetings, and participated in many webinars and seminars. Mark's been a resident since 1972. He's a veteran. He served the United States Army. And Mark received his Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from the University of Central Florida. And he is also a certified public accountant since 1991. And so it's a pleasure to introduce Mark. And I just want to also state for the record, Steve Tocknell, our immediate past chair from Jacksonville, is on the call. Welcome, Steve. So not to take away from Mark's time, we'll just get right into it. Go ahead, Mark.
So thank you all very much for having me. Vince asked me to do this presentation. It's about the upcoming vote in November for the residents, or the residents of or the voting membership of the state of Florida to vote on a reduction in addition to exemptions for property taxes. So I'm going to share my screen because I did a little presentation for everybody. See how that works. Could everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what we have on the ballot for the state of Florida is something called Florida HJR-1F. Interestingly enough, I heard somebody is on here from Colorado, and I would tell you that although this is not the same as Tabor, it's a bit like Tabor. So the only thing that doesn't flow from this particular legislation is an opt-out provision if voted on by the public, but it is similar to Tabor. So if you know anything about Tabor in the state of Colorado, I want to say almost 20 years now, they put something like this very similar in place, and so we're going to see what happens in the state of Florida, whether 60% of the people want to do this or not. So to just jump right in, what this particular legislation changes. For the state of Florida, it will add a new homestead exemption for non-school levies, and it's phased to $250,000 with a CPI escalation thereafter. So if this were to be voted in November of this year, next year for fiscal year 2028, the current exemption, which is up to $50,000, would jump immediately to $150,000 for homesteaded properties. In the state of Florida, homesteaded properties means a property that has been homesteaded, and it has a limitation on its taxable value growth, regardless of appraisal, to 3% per year or CPI, whichever is lower. And so and it was put in place, the Save Our Homes, that's what it's called, Save Our Homes, that was put in place back in the mid-90s, early 90s. And it's been in place since then. And over time, over at least the last 20 years, there's been minor tweaks, adding an exemption here, adding an exemption there. But this is the first full approach to try to phase out property taxes for homesteaded property owners only. It would also shift a cap or change a cap that we have for non-homesteaded properties, for non-homestead assessments, and reduce that from a 10% value change annually to a 5% value change annually. And in this particular case, county and municipal ad valorem spending would be limited to enumerated constitutional categories. So some of the categories that they put into this legislation would limit the use of ad valorem taxes to public safety, which would include police and fire, roads, and so maintenance of roads, new roads. It would allow for the issuance of debt and the use of these this ad valorem revenue to roads, and also for it would also can also be used for natural resources as well as pension contributions, and last but not least, to fund the administration, in this case, the elected officials of each municipality or governing body in the state of Florida that relies on property taxes. So from a timing standpoint for us, it would be on the ballot November 3rd, 2026. It would require 60% vote of the voters to put this in place. And if it is passed by 60% of the voters, it would go into effect January 1, 2027. And that would be effective for fiscal year 2028 in the state of Florida. Our fiscal years run from October 1 through September 30th. So October 1 of 2027, which would be fiscal year 2028, would be when this would be effective. It also has a section in there that would limit new residents, and they would now face a waiting period before accessing the larger exemption. So for, say, one of you all moved to the state of Florida and you bought a house and you applied for a homestead exemption, it would be limited to $50,000 a year for 5 years. And in the 5th year, it would then jump to this in fact, it would just go directly to $250,000 by then. And so this is what it changes. This is this particular piece of legislation. So for when I put this together, I said, well, okay, so how would this affect planning? Because I think that's what we're all talking about, right? You all are the planners of cities and how people build and where they build. And so how would this affect you all? So the numbers that I think are important to you all is the $150,000 non-school homestead exemption, the $250,000 non-homestead exemption, and the 5% non-homestead cap. So I can only speak for the city of Cape Coral because, frankly, I haven't gone around to all the other municipalities, all 450 of the other municipalities in the state of Florida, nor the 67 counties, nor the, I don't know, I think there's 1,500 special districts in the state of Florida, to figure out what their loss in revenue would be. However, for the city of Cape Coral, if this was put into effect at $150,000, we would see a $30 million decrease in revenue on property taxes in the first year. At $250,000, it's $47 million. So how does that relate to the numbers that we're talking about today? The city of Cape Coral's property taxes in its general fund is about $170 million. And so $30 million and a $47 million hit that is recurring every single year represents right around 33% of the total revenues coming into the general fund to fund governmental services. And that would include governmental services that are not currently funded by fees associated with planning. Now, those of you that have worked in a government before, planning in a government is twofold. One, you have people coming in and looking to build things in your city, and so there's a planning requirement associated with that. And then you have the second part, which is all the things that you have to do in order to make it to be able to plan for the future for people to come in here and build stuff in your city. And so there's what we have seen in the city of Cape Coral, and Vince can correct me, but I'm pretty sure about 70% of the work in the city of Cape Coral is done through the city's planning efforts. And I think the other 30% comes in as fee-based work for people coming in to build stuff. City of Cape Coral is a little bit unique in that when it was designed and started to be developed back in the late 50s, early 60s, the entire 114 square miles of the city was platted. For us, that means it takes a lot of planning effort to make changes to the existing plat. Other cities, they just have very large parcels that are not platted, and they get the joy of being platted through your efforts. But for us, we're already platted, which means every property has the ability to build. So with that said, for you as planners, how does these numbers affect you? It affects you whatever the dollar value is associated with the services that are being currently funded through property taxes, of which planning is one of them. So if you see a large decrease in the overall volume of revenue coming in that was originally going towards some service or some service level within your community or within that community in the state of Florida, this would have an impact on that. So I say that, so why does this matter to you? So our tax base, for us, it's tax-based compression. Any increase to the homestead exemption would directly shrink the taxable value that's available for doing any other work within the city of Cape Coral. Lower growth ceiling. When you're also cutting the non-homestead exemption assessment cap from 10% to 5%, you're talking about, for us, when you're talking about the commercial properties, you're limiting that growth as well. So somewhere along the way, you have to make up the difference somehow, some way, whether it's increased fees or otherwise. And then we run the risk of less implementation capacity. And I think this is really where it really impacts you all more than it does anybody else. So for planners, the risk here of passing this in the state of Florida has more to do with the fiscal capacity to be able to fund the things that you all are involved in. So if by the way, if anybody has any questions, please just let me know as I'm walking through this. Otherwise, we'll do all the Q&A at the end. So one of the things that we're looking at is the immediate effect to us, clearly compressing the residential taxable value used for non-school levies. This will create an immediate hit on where the tax base is being heavily owner occupied. So as an example, city of Cape Coral, 60% of our properties are homesteaded. So it's a big major hit to us as far as valuation is concerned and what's being paid. So all things being equal, I would consider this not so much an exemption or a decrease in revenues. It's more of a tax shift. It's who's actually paying the taxes and who isn't, who's paying for the services and who's not. And so I would look at the sector concentration because the school levies are excluded. Schools still would be taxed at their current rate. So any reduction, whatever those reductions might be on a property owner basis, they're not going to see any reduction in their school taxes. The longer term effect for us is this 5% cap on non-homesteaded properties. So if we've shifted the burden of all taxes from homesteaded properties in the state of Florida to non-homesteaded properties, and then we limited the growth associated with that, it will limit whatever revenues and whatever opportunities for growth that we may have in the state of Florida. And so, yes, you can go build new stuff. You can go build more houses. You can go do all of those things. But as soon as they get on the books, 5 years later, and they get this massive homestead exemption, at the end of the day, they're the ones paying for everybody else who's been here for a long period of time. And it will just continue to be that way. So we in the state of Florida, especially in local government, will be living off the growth to maintain current services, which is just, it's just wrong on a lot of levels. So anyways, what I'm trying to say is that will definitely decrease our opportunity and our revenues to do internal planning and how we would go about doing that. And so that will create some hard choices for us on millage strategies. When they pass this particular item for the legislation, I mean, for this item to go to the state for constitutional change in a vote, they also changed the ability of how we set millage rates. For the state of Florida, we have something called a rollback rate, and that's your starting point on an annual basis. If you want to go above the rollback rate, you'll need a 2/3 majority of your city council or your county commission or whomever in order to go above the rollback rate. And if you want to go higher than 10% above the rollback rate, say you've got a really big project coming in, you need to do a lot of stuff or something like that, which I'm not sure will ever happen again. If this passes, it would have to be a unanimous vote to go above that particular threshold. So this will have an effect on staffing growth. It'll have effect on service levels. We, as a city, will end up having to go out and probably adjust our fees commensurately, and it will definitely have an effect on capital phasing. So for us, I guess from a capital program improvement program implications, this is where many of the things, I mean, in the state of Florida, our comp plan, it has a capital improvement element. So if we don't have any capital improvements coming in, I'm not sure how good what good the comp plan will have for us. But anyways, we'll figure it out as we go along. The amendment will still allow some ad valorem support for infrastructure, natural resource projects, as I told you earlier, local bonds, debt service. The question for us is, prior to this, you always had to go to the voters for a vote on utilizing property taxes for debt service. This particular legislative change specifically says we can use ad valorem for debt payments or debt service. So for us, we're not sure exactly if this means we don't have to go to the voters anymore in order to approve this debt, but we're still limited when it comes down to the growth in the millage rate that's applied to the valuation within the city. So I think you still need to go to the voter. I think you still need to get a voter approval, and you would have a separate voter debt service associated with whatever it is that you're doing. The limitation on that debt service that's in this particular legislation limits the ad valorem to what is authorized by the state to use ad valorem. So you're limited on what you can use the debt service for. You're limited on what you can go out and borrow money for. So this will challenge this will create a challenge. It will reduce our room to actually support any projects in the one's public safety, pensions, and operations compete for the same constrained revenue stream. The moment you restrict your ability to actually set a millage rate, you now have constricted and constrained that particular revenue stream. I would expect that there will be a great deal of reprioritization within each city. We're already making plans ourselves to figure out exactly what that means. But we will be dealing with how to fund current operations, and expansion projects will likely face some delay and may never happen at all. So from a finance consequence for us, coverage capacity, debt perceptions, that sort of thing will have an impact here in how we go about issuing debt utilizing ad valorem taxes. So one of the things that I did and I wanted to do is kind of walk through what that means for us when we're talking about stress testing, what this means. So the base case for us would be, current taxable value trajectory, everything is good. We continue to have growth, life goes on, existing CIP. And then the exemption loss case, we take that into account, and then we have a low growth case and what that happens and how that affects everything. And so I would tell you that fast growing communities like ourselves, which have already been pre-platted, will end up having to put revenues in place that bypass that will end up bypassing the property taxes that we're paying for it previously. For the city of Cape Coral, we're already doing some of these things. We have stormwater fees. We have a mobility fees. We also have public safety facility demands. We have a public safety impact fee, which in the state of Florida nowhere near covers the cost of what it takes to build a brand new facility for public safety. But be that as it may, any of these kind of things, any of these approaches will have a constraint on any new development coming into the communities. So speaking of comprehensive plan, so the policies tied to any of these items, for mobility, roads, drainage, parks, civil, and public building expansion, we're going to end up creating or having a need for a closer linkage to whatever identified revenue sources are going to be applicable to that. In today's world, before something like this is passed, we have a little bit more leeway in utilizing a covenant to budget and appropriate, because you always had somewhere along the way, if you needed to make up something, you had the adjustment to millage rates. I would expect, and I think anybody who works in the municipal arena or works with governments will recognize that it's very hard to get super majorities or majority votes on something that will have an impact on their reelection within the next year. So I expect that this will be much harder to find those funding sources, which if you can't find the funding sources, then we end up not doing the capital improvements. I would expect that the capital improvement elements will probably be skinnied down quite a bit across the state of Florida, just simply because you might not have, or we will not have, the necessary revenues to be able to pick those up. Growth assumptions, I would say that, in this case, service area expansions or redevelopment commitments, I would expect will be harder to defend, where there's any implementation capacity that is weak, or a weak implementation capacity. So there's likely to be an impact on growth. So if there's an impact on growth and you're limiting your revenue intake to a growth model, you're going to start seeing some type of reduction within the actual service delivery within your communities. And I have no idea what that little C with the little squiggle line up underneath it is, but the distinction here will definitely sharpen between what projects are fundable by impact fees or by enterprise systems, and then those that are dependent on the broad local tax policy. So from a planning standpoint, I would expect that the comprehensive plans will be impacted somewhere along the way.
Hey, Mark, can I offer a comment?
Sure, by all means, please do.
Sure. Alara from Florida. So I just wanted to mention for those on the call that are not in the state of Florida, that just to put this into a little context, the local comprehensive plan in Florida is a legally binding document. It's not that case in many other states. I think there's just a handful of states that where the comprehensive plan or the growth management plan is a legally binding document. So we are required when we are reviewing our policies to be consistent with Florida statutes, and accordingly our LDRs have to be consistent with our comprehensive plan, and all of them are bound to any type of development or program that comes into the city. It's not something we can take as a guiding document. It is mandatorily required to adhere to.
Thank you, Laura, for that. I just took it for granted that everybody would know what a comp plan was, so my bad for that. Appreciate it.
Certainly that everyone knows, but I don't know that everyone knows that it's illegal. Like in Georgia, they have a comprehensive plan, but it's really a guide. It's not a mandatory legally standing document. So just to know that we are required by law to follow our comprehensive plans.
Since most of my background is outside of Florida, and I've been in Florida now for 20 years, I might be in a position to interpret Florida plans for non-Florida planners. I think our comprehensive plan might be it's almost like it's like a zoning ordinance at 30,000 feet. I think is one way I would look at it. It's a broad zoning ordinance, and then once you've satisfied the comprehensive plan, then you get back down to the zoning. Does that sound right to you, Laura? That's kind of the way I think of it.
Yeah, it's kind of like you might liken it to the Constitution. And then you have laws that implement the Constitution. It's the same way. The comprehensive plan is the overarching guiding document, and then the land development regulations implement that comprehensive plan. But you have to be consistent and you have to follow. So if there is an inconsistency between what the LDR state and what the comprehensive plan states, the comprehensive plan always is the ruling document. So if the LDRs are inconsistent, then you defer to the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mark, if I could ask a question at this point, I appreciate the explanation. Thanks, Laura and Steve. But something I was going to ask anyway at the end. We've kind of had this discussion 3-4 years ago, you and I, about funding things. So planning is not your on-demand service looked at as where you charge fees, except for applications that are on demand, zoning change, comprehensive plan amendment, and so forth, variance and so forth. So the actual mandate that we have to meet that Alar described, the comprehensive plan, if the rules change, if the governor's wish is met that only certain services can be used for property tax, what do you think the strategy could be or would be in local governments to pay for an unfunded mandate like that, like planning, whether it's done by the public sector or the private sector?
Well, it's good that you should say that because I'm almost there.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I've got like 3 more slides to go.
All right.
I realize that this is probably way overkill in trying to walk through this. But it's a little difficult to take what is strictly a financing issue and apply it to something that, and I recognize that is not necessarily a finance issue. So I've done my best to try to give everybody an idea of what the impacts of this financing issue is, how it ends up being resolved. Let's see what we can come up with. Because it's going to be groups like you that are going to end up coming up with the actual solution to this. It's not going to be people like me who really are the implementers of something. I mean, but we'll get there here in a second.
Okay.
So for us looking at feasibility modeling, and again, this is really a finance issue. It's how do we deal with these changes and these potential in this case, an implication of the potential benefit of going from a 10% cap to a 5% cap. And what does that do from a predictability of tax escalation within the system? I can tell you that it's been rare since they originally put this 10% cap in place, which was, by the way, done by a constitutional change, for anybody to actually get to the 10% value change year over year. You just don't have that kind of growth when you're going out there and reappraising properties on an annual basis, and you're going to see a 10% growth like that. So, but at the same time, I can tell you it'll be easier to predict on a 5% change than it is on a 10% change. So nobody has ever been looking at these as 10% anyways. We usually look at it at 2 to 3%. So, and that's what we've actually seen. So from us, 5% and forecasting on a 5% basis will be simpler. Offsetting risk, this is going to be the bigger issue, is how do we offset the risk of the reduction in the revenues that we're talking about? I can tell you that we will propose higher fees. We'll be looking at different types of assessments, because as you noticed when I talked about what you can utilize ad valorem taxes for, you notice I never said anything about parks. And parks are important. It's important from a planning standpoint. It's important from a community standpoint. It's, it's important from for a variety of reasons. And so we may look at park assessments, individual park assessments, to be able to fund our park system as well. We would likely see higher permit charges. We would likely see, we will definitely see a slower public infrastructure delivery unless it's legally supportable by something else. So for us, it's, what does these tax savings mean, and what is the reduction in value to the community on a dollar for dollar basis? And that's what we'll be into modeling when it comes to this. So some of the adjustment paths that we're likely to be looking at is that, we would definitely be reforecasting our values and looking at homestead versus non-homestead. We would update all of our fee studies, especially our, and we would re-rank all of our capital projects, and we would look at any from a legal mandate standpoint. I'm interesting to talk about the comp plan. I try to make sure that everybody understands that, we shouldn't be doing capital projects if they're not in our comp plan. So, so, you got to update your comp plan, especially the capital improvement element, periodically, to make sure your stuff is in there. And tighten the linkage between land use commitments. And this is where it really comes in for you all. The land use commitments to concurrency expectations and actual funding pathways. So this is the important thing for you, is how do we tighten our linkage between our land use commitments, what we have committed to our land use within our city, or any city for that matter. And I think, from a private practice standpoint, you all may be able to, be out there working this with the community planners in all the communities, what the concurrency expectations are going to be within those comp plans, and then how do we actually fund those? We may find that developers will end up funding things, more than they have in the past, to be honest with you, to be able to get these developments in place. So for us, where our planning programs most exposed, the first two are probably the biggest ones. We certainly see that redevelopment and any placemaking initiatives will have a medium to high risk. The core life safety projects, there's a low deferral of risk here, because basically the state said, hey, you have to fund everything that's public safety, and everything else after that is irrelevant, or it has very little relevance. And so for you all, I think this, I'm hoping that this kind of talks about what we're talking about. What the bill does is best understood for us is that it's a local fiscal issue. We do have the authority to fund the infrastructure and services necessary that they've identified as being necessary. However, I believe that it will reduce the flexibility and growth of the revenue base that comprehensive plans and CIPs are dependent on. I know I just read that to you, but at the end of the day, I believe that that is exactly what's going to happen. And I don't really have a good answer for this, other than I would expect that the linkage between land use commitments and real funding pathways are going to end up having to be adjusted based upon any future growth in the state of Florida. And that kind of covers it. Probably more than anybody wanted to know, but and for those that don't live in the state of Florida, it's it's an interesting academic exercise, but it's going to have an effect, I think, on what you all do for a living. It's going to certainly have an effect on what we all do for a living.
Thank you. Very enlightening, in my opinion. I hope my colleagues agree. Rose, you wrote a note about an issue you wanted to raise.
Yeah, Indiana has been working on what I consider to be a draconian race to the bottom in local government finance since 2008. We constitutionally adopted property tax caps that year, or that went into effect that year. of 1% for homestead residential, 2% for non-homestead residential and agriculture, and 3% for commercial and industrial, without knowing the impacts to local government. And those caps remain in place, and they affect schools. But then we also did school choice vouchers, taking more money away from public schools. There's a growth limit now of 4% that municipalities can capture per year. And we have implementation has been kicked to fiscal year 28. It was supposed to start fiscal year 27, which starts next week. But they're reducing property taxes and increasing income tax, allegedly to save homeowners money, but it'll end up saving about $350 per household. Most of us would rather have government services. They're also limiting how we can increase building and development fees. Starting July 1, you can only increase your building and development fees once every 5 years and by an amount that is formula based in the legislation. Starting at the end of 27, municipalities that do planning and zoning have to submit multiple housing reports and conduct hearings on how to increase housing production based on their zoning ordinance, and that's an unfunded mandate. And currently, the governor and lieutenant governor are talking about eliminating property taxes for anyone over 65 or who has paid off their home, and or eliminating all property taxes and going to a 15% sales tax. Never mind, right now, sales tax doesn't go to municipalities, it goes to the state. So we've been living this nightmare for more than a decade, almost 2 decades, and it's continuing to get worse. And we really don't know how local government is going to be financed starting in 28.
Rose, did you say you were in Indiana?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I can tell you, our legislature clearly did no effort or no outreach or anything. They've been trying to work. I mean, this came down from our governor because he wants to run for president in 2 years, and he's somehow got them all on board with this. Again, it takes 60% of the people to vote for this. I'm not fully convinced that they're going to get to 60%.
None of ours has to go to the voters.
Now, that's probably one of the reasons why they were able to do what they did. But here, to change the Constitution, you got to go to the voters. So,
well, they're doing it without constitutional amendment. To do a constitutional amendment, they would have to go to the voters. That's what they did with the property tax caps in 2008.
Yeah. Fortunately, in Florida,
didn't understand.
Fortunately, in Florida, they get all these caps are built into our Constitution, so any change has to be adjusted that way.
That is fortunate.
So anyway, I don't even know how Indiana's gonna. Well, now I know why I haven't heard anything about it, because they haven't implemented it yet. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but I think everybody has their own nightmares. Jennifer had to jump off here, but when they put Tabor in place in Colorado, it had a debilitating effect on communities. And fortunately, they wrote into their constitutional amendment that if the city wanted to opt out, they could do so by a majority vote of the people. And practically, I won't say every city, but the majority of them opted out.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I grew up in Michigan and graduated from high school right before the beginning of when they stopped paying for schools with property taxes, but didn't really have any alternate solution adopted before they let property taxes for schools sunset. So that was fascinating, but I moved to Indiana and went to college, so I didn't have to live with the implications of that.
Mhm.
Well, it's good to know that not every somebody else has to deal with this.
Yeah.
But I think again, I go back to the specific impact to the state of Florida. It will have an impact on how we implement comprehensive plans. It will have an impact on how we pay for the service, the internal service for planners. And I would expect that somewhere along the way, many of the things that we do will end up being fee-based and charged to the external side. We have the same situation as far as building here is concerned for fees. We're limited to a time and materials. It goes into effect on January 1. Everybody in the state of Florida is going to have to redo their building fees. So if they didn't have it already built on a time and materials basis. So we have our own. Yeah.
I'm working with a client to get theirs updated before the July 1st deadline. And then it takes 90 days to go into effect, and there'll be 180 days after July 1st. And we did one amendment already, but it's not effective yet. And so literally I had somebody file for secondary plat for 11 lots, and their total fee is $245. But the municipality is paying for me to do the review and the consulting engineering review. That's a lot more than $245.
Sure is. Sure is. Yeah, it's like I said. I mean, I'm in this business and I understand it probably better than most. I wouldn't vote for this nonsense for anything. It's incredibly naive for elected officials to do this and to put people through this crap. But that's me. Won't get on my soapbox about it.
I mean, I think the fact that I used draconian race to the bottom tells you how I feel about it.
Yep. And that's exactly where the state of Florida is going, unfortunately.
Yeah, we're competing with y'all for who gets there first.
So it would appear.
I mean, it sounds to me a little bit like Brexit, where everybody sort of intentionally ignores the what do you call it, the bad things that might happen, and goes ahead and votes for it. You've got the 60% requirement, but don't you think people could be deluded, if you will, into thinking that this is going to save them money without any downside?
Oh, for
Well,
sure.
let's put it this way: the state of Florida put together a calculator on their website in advance of voting for this. So you can go on the website right now and you can calculate what your savings will be if this goes into effect. And that's exactly what people will do. The difference is that there's going to be competing advertising. There's going to be a group of people that are going to be advertising to vote no on this particular amendment. And the governor will be putting together his own advertising team to vote yes for this amendment. So a lot of people are going to get a lot of information. And, if you truly don't like government, vote no.
Yeah.
And so in my part of the state, that's exactly what the sentiment is. Nobody trusts government. Nobody wants to pay taxes. But then they want to complain about their stormwater systems and the sewer lines breaking and water pressure's low. It's an educational process, and I will say that APA Florida has engaged in a PR forum to help create messaging regarding we have to stay in our lane. So we're going to talk about the purpose of planning and how we need to understand how important that is, especially in high growth states like Florida. So we are starting those discussions on what that messaging is going to look like in order to help spread, some information regarding how your life could be affected, how the quality of your life could be affected if this does pass.
Yep.
Our
And still, thank you for that.
yeah, our economist, who is a journalist and is, the loudest voice in the room and really the only voice in the room about the economic impact of public policy in the state. The former guy was from IU and he was quite libertarian, but the current guy is from Ball State and he's very, very conservative. And I used to never agree with him on anything. And lately I've been agreeing with his pieces because he is calling for the end to the madness about how poorly we fund government, and people want places to be places that have services.
Well, I haven't been following it as closely. It came up suddenly, put it that way, in Florida. Is the development community on board with this, or are they uh, getting ready to fight it? Because I think this would be very harmful to development, wouldn't it?
Uh, I, to tell you the truth, it's kind of hard to say. So I'll give you I'll give you what I think will happen. Is if this goes into place, it'll take at least 5 to 10 years, but it will happen. That valuations will continue to rise. The reason is because there's very little impact from a taxation standpoint. So let's just say we put this $250,000 in place. So there's a lot of homesteaded properties out there that will pay zero taxes. And so in order for taxes to start being paid again, you end up having to have growth in value for that to happen. So 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we'll be right back to the same place we're at today. And they'll be demanding a $350,000 exemption, a $400,000 exemption. So those people don't have to pay taxes because the valuations in the state of Florida will continue to go up. That's exactly what economists are predicting. This happened in the state of California, and I don't expect that there will be much difference here. So from a development standpoint, it'll be difficult to develop but it'll have to be the valuation that ends up changing. And so if I'm modeling out a new development that's coming in, I'd be modeling, well, how much taxes is this going to bring in so I can fund the police that will be able to service that development? How much taxes is this going to bring in so I can fund fire? If my fire assessment isn't the only number that's being paid for that. So if the fire assessment covers 100% of the cost, okay, well, that's fine. But now how much does the fire assessment have to be? And how much does everybody else have to pay for that new development to come in? This will be the constant fight and the constant push and pull that I believe will happen over the next 10 years if this passes. I know that sounded like gloom and doom, but
No,
it's more like reality.
I appreciate your candor on it, your assessment. Wow. See what happens with the planning laws. I don't know. Laura was talking about our PR firm that APA is using, APA Florida. Are lobbyists looking at working with the legislatures about what they see as the
Yeah.
future of planning legislation?
Yes, we do have a lobbying firm, MHD, and they are part of these conversations. We have reached out to Florida League of Cities, Florida Association of Counties, FCCMA, FRA, and we had anticipated a meeting earlier this week to talk about messaging and what kind of collaborations we could create. Unfortunately, several of the organizations canceled just 15 minutes before our meeting started, but Florida League has created a coalition, and so that first meeting will be July 8th, and myself and Stephanie Savisco, who is our executive director of APA Florida, will be attending that meeting, so stay tuned. But regardless, we have hired more communications to help us with some messaging efforts. So we will have that independent of whatever the coalition creates.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very-
I am pretty sure that the planning community sees things probably much clearer than I do. Again, I'm looking at this more from it's strictly a finance issue,
Mhm.
but everybody in the state of Florida will be impacted if this
Yes.
passes.
Yeah.
Everybody. Doesn't matter who it is.
Mhm.
As much as the police folks think that they're going to be protected because they'll be fully funded through ad valorem, all they have to do is just run a scenario of no growth, and they'll figure
Mhm.
out that they may not be as protected as they think they are.
Well, I mean, the police and fire take up about 50% of the Jacksonville budget. So even if you're protected, I mean, a revenue cut of an equivalent amount there's no way you'd have enough money or that you could keep funding police and fire at the same level. They're too big they've got too big a piece of the pie uh, for the time for them not to get affected if the pie gets smaller.
That is exactly what the potential will be based upon the changes that they've made.
Mhm. Right. Well, I think we're coming up on it now at 4, and I think we have a couple of minutes left. If anybody has any final thoughts, Mark, I want to thank you for a tremendous presentation. Really appreciate it. And if you could send me a copy of that, so we can have it for our notes in our recap that we share with our members. We appreciate it. But
No worries. I appreciate you inviting me. Thank you all very
Yeah.
much, and a pleasure to meet all of you. Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks,
that's
Mark.
great. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you at the next program. Everybody, have a good day.
Thank
Okay.
you. Bye.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Vince.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
It went well.
Yeah, scary. They make sure I'm off here.